Hello and welcome everyone to my channel, Bangladesh First. This is your host Lincoln, and I will start this video with a sad news. And the news is that my previous channel got banned for some unspecified reason. I opened my YouTube Studios on my laptop and I just saw like that page, that review page for submitting an appeal. I submitted an appeal to YouTube. Let's see what happens. But in the meantime, I thought, well, why should I stop? I didn't do anything wrong. I don't know why my channel got banned. So, it's better to start something new. And the first name that came to my mind is Bangladesh First. I'm a big fan of that show, which is done by Nicholas J. Fuentes. Very edgy, I know, and I'm not supposed to watch that show. I also know that. But it's really inspiring, like standing for your people, standing on business for your people is really good. So I thought of this name, Bangladesh First. And this is going to be my channel, my outlet. And the first episode that I thought of dropping in this channel is, it will just destroy this channel. It's like the worst video someone could make and post in Bangladesh, talking about religion and politics, two of the least controversial subjects as they call it. And I thought, well, let's do something taboo. Let's talk about them. So as you would have probably guessed, yes, this video would be titled The Separation of the Church and State. A very famous line that came out of the French Revolution that we had. I don't even know the exact year, I just know French Revolution happened and I really like it. I just know that much about French Revolution. And we're also going to talk about the Bolshevik Revolution, aka the rise of the USSR, aka Russian Revolution, if you want to call it. And at last, we're also going to talk about Chinese Revolution as well. Now, you may be asking, why would someone bring these, random words, random revolutions in the discussion, allegedly about the separation of church and state? Well, you would understand really soon. Let's get into it. So if you look at the political trends and just trends in general in Bangladesh, one of the most thriving issues, the top contender on the list would be religious politics or religion in politics. There is like a forced inclusion of politics into religion and religion into politics. You cannot just put religion in politics and expect that, religion, like politics won't get into religion as well. And we see that in Fridays in mosques, political parties just come filming their agenda. I last saw a video of an imam was literally crying because some political candidate, some electionee came to the mosque and just started talking and talking and talking. He was just helpless. What can you do? If you protest him, you could be killed for it. So it's not worth saying anything. But you see the helplessness, the genuine helplessness that the religious folks will face if a religious regime comes to power. Because if that happens, if religion gets into politics, politics will inevitably get into religion as well. And I don't know how much you're gonna like that. So that's one thing. But that's not the focus of today's video. If you look at your surrounding, if you look in your friends, if you have 100 friends, you at least see good 20% of them, transitioning into more traditionalist Islamist, or some of them could have gotten, radical. They probably have become radical Islamist, whatever that is. I know it's taboo to say those words, but it's just a reality now. How many university going so-called higher educated, high educated, whatever you want to call it. High educated is probably a good term to describe them, they're high, but somehow they're educated as well. Anyways, you'd see that shift. That's a real thing. Everyone and their mother seems to have gotten more religious, after the revolt we had, civil unrest that we had at August 5th of 2024. So it has been 1.5 years or so. Anyways, so the reason why this shift has taken place and constantly is rising, it's not getting depleted, it's not decreasing. I would rather say it's increasing with time. The reason for that being the case is that for past 15 years, being a religious Muslim person could have gotten you into serious trouble. Many people were, arrested, they were abducted, they were forcibly disappeared, they faced disappearances because they were suspected as being radicals, And why were they persecuted for being religious? It is because the ex-regime that we had, they thought, religious people really put a serious danger against them. They were real, they were real, institutions that could dealt a heavy blow to their iron rule, the Iron Curtain. So that's why they persecuted them. We saw the really unjust persecution of so many, imams, Islamic leaders, and genuine good people got into the crossfire, the crosshairs of the ex-government. So So that thing, when that disappeared, that oppressive force, which was like oppressing everyone with excessive force, just because they're against them, they did not tolerate any opposition. If you're a nationalist, you were oppressed. If you're religious, you were oppressed. Anyone with the gut to stand against them was rushed down. So when that weight was lifted off of the chest of the common folk, they just came out, they just openly started becoming religious. I think we're just seeing that. A huge part of the renaissance, the religious renaissance that we're witnessing, is just people being able to breathe. And I don't see any problem with that, to be really honest. But what I have a problem with is the short-sightedness and people being duped into believing that if our country becomes like a really communal country, if it becomes a really religiously obsessed country, like in reality Bangladesh will never, it's like unimaginable for Bangladesh to turn into a country like Afghanistan or somewhere where there is an actual Islamic regime. That will not happen in Bangladesh because of many reasons, because of many geopolitical reasons, and in this shifting world, in today's world, it's not really practical to think that, so what will happen at most is that Bangladesh will turn into a country like Pakistan, or funnily enough, like India, which opposed Pakistan for the longest time because they said like Pakistan is a state built on religion, and India, we are based on liberalism, we are based on socialism, we are based on a-religious principles. India also seems to have gotten more communal. They seem to have gotten more radical. The radical Hinduism have gotten like a really big push in India. So in that bandwagon, Bangladesh will just engage in it. Like Bangladesh will have a radical government at most, like Pakistan. So that's the maximum that the people can expect. But on the flip side, if you see what's the ground reality in these countries, like how much people are suffering in these countries, how there is no freedom of speech, there is no freedom of even action. If you protest against the regime, you'll be like mowed down, you'll be crushed by the police or the army. So that condition is really something that people here will not like. A huge portion of the population will not like. So if they fall for it, if they fall for a radical government here in Bangladesh, it will not end up being something good, something suitable. But that awareness doesn't seem to be in our population. They just seems to have gotten drunk. They seem to be gotten like totally drunked out. They don't see any logic right now. They will just vote because they think they will go to heaven if they vote for the certain political party. So the problem with that is really apparent to the sober ones like me and the concerned citizens who are now being flagged with like different labels and shit. We see the drunkenness of those actions. We see the duped future, the totally like bricked up future of that, line of action. But how many people are with it, like really talking against it, doing something against it? So it is important to raise voice against, these movements that are, they will surely fail. So that's something to think about, which people do not seem to be thinking as of now. I would probably cut a portion of that last clip I recorded because it's exhausting to talk to a mic without having like a visual audience or looking at yourself. That happens when you record something from the front-facing mic of your phone. But anyways, so the direction that everything is going in currently, it's like a backwards trend. And I know that's like a fucking cliche thing to say. Like whenever you say like being like having a religious system is backwards, people like come at you like mad dogs. Like, what the fuck did you say, motherfucker? Being religious is backwards. Like, fuck you. Like, they will name you 1,000 things. Like, they will use curse words that you wouldn't even probably know. Like, they will make up words to fucking like slander you. But I don't care. If you look at the trajectory of history, if you look at past 200 years, countries that are doing that's realism, right? I like realism. If you look at countries like China, Russia, in our block, whatever the block it is, like they're not Western countries. Russia is not West. They're in parallel with us. If you draw a line like in the head of Bangladesh, like through by the middle of Bangladesh, like a straight line going through the Bay of Bengal, and if you go upwards, you'll see Russia, you'll see China. So they're our neighbors technically. So if you look at these countries, the trajectory that they had, like they're successful countries. They're like hundreds of years ahead of us in terms of what they have accomplished, what they have, their power in all regards. And the reason that they achieve that is is because they had a very good revolution. They have a really good functioning system. And why do they have that? Because they had revolutions. They had revolution against their traditional system. They overthrew their rulers. For example, if you look at Bolshevik Revolution, which happened after French Revolution, that's why I said at the beginning of this video that we'll be discussing about these revolutions. Like in the case of Bolshevik Revolution, the Tsar Nicholas II, who was the king of Russia back then, he expanded Russia like crazy. He was the most successful Tsar ever. But his policies, when it come to policies, he was the Christian king, Orthodox Christian king. But despite that, the working class in Russia, they were not happy with the Tsar, his policies, his stances, and moreover, the things that the working class were asking for, like their amends, their requirements, their requests, whatever their points that they had, they were being ignored, and the working class, they just got mowed down. They were shot upon, they were killed. And as a result, we saw the rising of Vladimir Lenin, who led the revolution and threw off the Tsar. And in one of the comments that Lenin made after the revolution, he said the revolution in Russia was not expected because, according to Karl Marx, because Russia turned into a socialist country and socialism was popularized by Karl Marx. According to Marx, countries like London, New York, and big cities, they will see socialist revolution first, not Russia. Feudalistic societies, kind of agrarian economies like Russia won't see a socialist revolution because, according to Marx, socialist revolution will happen in countries which are in a system that is really oppressive, such as a capitalistic system. But despite that, a socialist revolution took place in Russia. And if you look at policies that Russia enacted, for example, the very famous policy that is now renowned in worldwide, like everyone embraces it, is that the so-called work-life balance, like 8-hour workday, like paid vacations and shit. It all came from Bolshevik Revolution. They were the first ones, they were the first who implemented worker rights, and a very important thing is they were the first who let women engage in the political life. The female voting thing, that came from Russia. So the effects of Russian Revolution were really far-reaching, and most surprising of all was the Chinese Revolution, which was led by Mao Zedong, who was a person of really middle-class background. Someone could argue even below middle class. He led a huge sum of people. He did the long march thing, people now often use the word long march to wherever, long march to Jamuna, long march to wherever. But they don't understand the history of the word long march. It was first done by Mao Zedong of China, who led the revolution that happened in China. And as a result of that socialist revolution that China had, which led to the separation of church and state, and the same thing happened in Russia, same thing happened in France, that paved the way for current modern China. The policies that they have there, all the innovation, like the corruption-less state that China is today, like the unheard of, like India and China, like the population base is the same, foundings are kind of the same, both, China wasn't doing really good 200 years ago, but look at China now and look India now. In the colonial era, when British Raj was when they were ruling, India was doing far better. Their GDP was better than China. But look at them today. China is a first world country. Even the lowest of the low cities in China, they are better than any Indian cities. So that happened because China got into a mode of rule. They enacted a system which gave them results, and I'm for that. I'm not so much for the socialism that China has, or the socialism that Russia, although Russia now on paper is a democratic country, but wherever, I'm not for that, but I'm for the results. I want people to prioritize their rights, their right for work, their right for health, their right for education, everything, equal opportunity, all of that. I want Bangladesh to do good by whomever's hand. I don't care if it's Jamaat or BNP, whatever. I just want to see our country thriving, and for that we need good policies, and for good policies we need a good government, a meritocratic government, a kind of virulent, unapologetic, ruthless government which will root out the corruption. At the same time, it will be, it will not have a short-sightedness which many of the political pundits and parties seem to have today. They just see 2 days ahead. They don't see 20 years ahead or 200 years ahead. The plan has to be for a long run. You can't have a short plan because you'll run out of it. So that is needed in our country, but we are not getting any of it. BNP is talking about some policy policies which I really like, and I'll make a separate video on them. But aside from BNP, we don't see any concrete policies from any other political parties, what they're gonna do, So I see some hope from the top portion of BNP, not so much from the bottom, like basement dwellers of the Nationalist Party, but they're at least saying something, and especially why I like them is because of the grounds on which they stand, because to me, whenever, especially in our region, in this Indian subcontinent area, there is so much like fakery, there is so much fallacies, there is so much exploitation, like faking and everything. Like 10 toes down, dirty politics, and all of that revolves around religion. Like in India, look at India. Like people in Bangladesh hate India so much, yet they won't see the dirty things that happen in India. For example, like the insanity that revolves around the current ruling party, BJP. Like I think it's their third term in ruling the country. I don't know, I'm not sure. It's the second term or the third term that the BJP is ruling the country. But like, look at India. People, as I said earlier, they would rather stay hungry. They would rather stay miserable as they are. They won't ask for raise. They won't ask for jobs. They won't ask for food, education, whatever. The things that really would uplift their lifestyle, really would uplift them from poverty to doing well. They don't care about that. What they care about is the religious factor. They care about Narendra Modi because Narendra Modi will save the Hindus. But isn't that like foolishness to fall for it? Because if there are no Hindus, if all the Hindus die, if all the Hindus are in dark, if they aren't getting opportunities, if they're not living like a full human, if they're living like subhumans, why would it matter? Why should it matter that if it's a religious or a non-religious government? Like to me, the line should be that, well, my country is not oppressing me. My country isn't like stopping me from going to the mosque or the mandir, whatever. They're not forcing those authoritarian laws. They're not, like for example in China, like their socialist policy is like a little too aggressive. Like for example the Uyghur Muslim thing, like they're like too much left wing. That's bad. And also like in France, they have banned like burqa, niqab and everything. Like they're really anti right wing sentiments there. They don't tolerate shit like that, and I'm against them. I'm for freedom. I'm for tolerance in that regard. People should be free to do certain things. Like my definition is that you should be allowed to do things to the degree that you're not hampering anyone else's freedom. So for example, if you're like wearing a dress full of needles, or if you're wearing a freaking jacket full of like knives like poking out, that should not be permitted. Because if you like, what if you go into a crowded street? What if you try to squeeze yourself amidst of a lot of people? You're gonna inevitably stab people, so that would violate other people, so that shouldn't be allowed. So policies should be like that. Like people should be allowed to have a certain degree of freedom, and that's the discussion, right? Like where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line between insanity and sanity, freedom and oppression? That's the everlasting debate that we'll have forever. But let me end this video with saying like that was such a blunder. Let me end this video by saying this. What will solve this, like blindness, this blind movement that we have in our country? People leaning towards tendencies that are proven to be failure in Pakistan, in India, and elsewhere. Only thing that will save them is education. If they really start reading what these parties are saying, if they really become aware, if they learn about history, what happens when these things take place, if they see the consequence of the actions, only then could they be taking a right decision, if they're aware. That's the first thing. And good influencers, man, like there are so many bad faith actors, people who are just grifting off of people's belief. Like the weapon that they have is people's belief. They're playing with your beliefs. So that needs to be stopped by good influencers, and I hope I'm acting as one. I aspire to be one. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I've said everything that I had in my mind to say. And I don't know if I've made till the end. If you have made till the end, let me know. Like DM me, or like, I think DMing is an option in Facebook, but I don't know what will the YouTube folk will do. But do whatever. Let me know. If you've enjoyed it. Thank you.